So thanks everybody for coming today and joining me for this Better Balance Friendly Floor workshop. Um, I have a deep and dividing interest in falling well and having good balance, and I'll chat a little bit with you about that. But I am just curious for folks. So if it's possible for you to type in the chat, if you've fallen at all in the last, like in an unintentional way in the last 3 months,
About
to
six.
either type yes into the chat or just raise your hand so I get a sense of that. Often people are motivated to come to sessions like this when they've had a fall happen. Um, and the other thing I'm just curious about, today we've got our fair share of ice and snow and it's melting. So who knows what my walk is actually looking like right this minute. But how would you rate your sense of balance when you're walking on ice or uneven surfaces? So 0 would be, pretty poor, and 10 would be like you've got balance like a tightrope walker and you're golden. So what would you say? We've got a 7. You could type it in. You could unmute. Right. Okay. So yeah, there's some frequent falls. Okay. So I about a 4. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I would say for myself personally, I've had things, conditions and situations in my life where my balance has been eroded for specific periods of time. I can't say that it's tanked overall. But yeah, I noticed this year for myself feeling much more concerned about the snow and ice than, in fact, I have ever before. So it's something that I think is really important to nurture. And I wanted to both share a little bit about my approach to balance and also lead you through a process in how I look at nurturing balance and supporting it. So, couple ideas I want to share before we get into the movement part. One is I think it's really important to distinguish between balance that is about stability and balance that's about a more like dynamic balance, like a mobility based balance. And part of this comes from I was doing some research not too long ago. The Ontario Neurotrauma Foundation focused a study on falls at midlife. So they looked at studies from like 2000 to 2019, so almost 20 years for people ages 40 to 64. And the number one related fall related injuries, they happen outside. It's that tripping, slipping, colliding, unexpected thing happening outdoors. In Canada, a lot of it is snow and ice related. And they saw like almost up to 4,000 emergency room visits each year related to falls at midlife. And so they made recommendations like screening for balance starting at age 45, doing education in terms of lifelong balance supporting activity. And so, when I read that sort of stat, is like, there's definitely room to grow on this. Um, oh, missed what the number is. So up to 4,000 emergency room visits. Is that the number, Heather, that you were wanting?
Probably the balance assessment.
Oh, the balance assessment. Well, and let's actually we could talk about it statistically. I'm a very like let's do it. So I'm actually going to invite you. We're going to explore a little bit the stability. Oh, ER visits. Yeah, so up to 4,000 a year, which is significant, right? Yeah. So if we do a little bit of the balance stability test, this comes out of almost every client I have that starts with me asks if standing on one leg will improve their balance. And the answer is yes, it's significant. And so we're gonna explore that a little bit. So again, when I invite you to do movement, it's your choice whether you want to participate or not. But if you feel up for and willing to stand up, helpful for you to find like something close by that you could sort of hold for support, the back of your chair, a wall, because again, any of the movement I want to explore, I want you to stay safe with that. And it's totally okay if you just want to watch with this. So let's try the one-legged balance standing test. So the you can try it a few times. One of the researchers that I looked at said that there's a significant difference if you can stand on one leg for 30 to 60 seconds. So I'm just going to do a little balance test. I'll start the timer and we'll see how everyone does. Okay. And I guess I could do this too. So as I watch, and you might just notice, as we're exploring this, when it starts to feel challenging, we're 30 seconds in. I'm noticing I picked my left leg. It's my bad balance leg. So I'm starting to work a lot. Last 15 seconds. Okay, so that's a minute. No, for sure. No worries about if you can't participate. All of the suggested things are optional for you. So what there's a motion analysis laboratory at the Mayo Clinic. um, they sort of made a determination that if you can stand on one leg for 30 seconds, that's pretty good. If you can stand on one leg for 60 seconds, that's great. And other researchers have linked that to if you really can't stand on one leg for 10 seconds, as a benchmark, they see quite a significant correlation to some pretty, bad health outcomes, especially as we age. And so it's a little test for yourself if you choose to take one thing away to sort of stand on one foot, each foot, separately during the day. This is one super simple. It was a minute way to work with your balance. I think that's a great idea. And I don't know about you, but I don't do a lot of just standing in place. I tend to move around a lot. And so I do think that it's really helpful to look at both the stability and the dynamic mobility aspect of balance. And I tend to think about balance as a kind of internal GPS for the body. It's a system that's actually made up of several parts. The good news about balance, we can always improve it. And the better news is even if some parts of our balance system don't work. Like I've worked with a client who had extreme neuropathy. He had MS in his feet, so he really couldn't feel the floor with his feet. We were able to work with other parts of his balance system to improve his functional balance. So let's talk a little bit about the kind of three aspects of our balance system. So number one is vision. 70% of our balance comes from how we look around. It helps define our personal horizon, how far above the ground we are, and what we're doing in relationship to our environment. So that's number one's vision. Number two is sort of inner ear. You've probably heard the word vestibular. That's about 15%. It's how we locate primarily our head in space. And you may have even seen right next to our ear these really tiny semicircular canals that help tell us where our head is, are we tilted, are we looking, and it feeds information into our brain. So that's vestibular, 15%. The third part is sensors that are in our skin, in our muscles, in our tissues. Another 15% is how we sense contact with our environment. So you may have heard this word proprioceptive connection, how our feet work, using hands to hold a handrail. It's not just that it steadies us, it literally feeds information that helps our balance system work better. So the sad reality is, as we age, we can experience a diminished sense of balance. And the other thing that I really find goes hand in hand with it, as we start to feel a little less secure in our balance, we can create a sort of cumulative sense of movement habits that are striving to keep us stable. Because the good thing about our brain, its really first job is to keep us safe. And but the difficulty is that as we strive for stability, we may go into habits that actually undercut our more dynamic sense of balance. And so this is going to be the sort of taste of process I'm going to have us do today. But if you're willing, let's do another stand test. I think we will get rid of the timer because we don't need to do a minute of this. So I'll tell you a little bit and then you could try it. So again, coming to stand with one leg. Feel free to hang on to something, although you can have something close by ready. So stand on one leg and now close your eyes and notice how that changes your balance. It's just a little reminder that it's always good to hear stats. I need to feel stuff in my body for it to be true, to feel that you can find balance, but when you turn off your visual field, it changes. And so you have all of a sudden your balance becomes an active seeking process when we do it. The other thing I would say, so feel free to open your eyes for a second, is that this time when you close them, have the back of your hand on a chair on the wall, and notice how that physical contact changes the balance project. Now, admittedly, you've just had one practice round without your vision, but notice if you can feel whether the touch helps you, or depending on your personal recipe of balance, that touch may actually destabilize you. This is the thing I've really learned working with clients. There's ways ideally that these systems work together. I find everyone has a personal recipe about how they balance, what they've learned works for them. And so it's not quite as straightforward to say this is the right way, because it may not, it may work great for Marlene, but it doesn't work at all well for Sherilyn.
That's really interesting. I do way better without touching.
Right. So there you go. Yeah. Yeah, and this is this thing about learning to work with sensory information well. We have these opportunities to integrate it. We also have habits about how our body, our brain, our nervous system have integrated. And so sometimes in exploring this, we destable ourselves and then we reorganize in a high, with a higher capacity. So let's let's shift towards doing something. So I will have you sitting for most of this, and you've had some tastes of just attempting this stability balance. I just going to mention before we get started, I was chatting with a few people who are on early. This is important to me. My mom, I lived with my mom most of my life. She was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. So balance was never a given. Every day she had, optical neuritis. She had limited depth perception on some days, better on others. And so it really kind of inspired me when I did my Feldenkrais training about 4 years ago, that I could focus on balance and mobility and make a difference in people's lives. Um, and since then, it's really helped me, reach out to people that, we can't change certain health conditions, but we can change how functional balance can be for people. Um, the the other piece I would sort of say is this approach fundamentally is not so much about what you learn about balance in a cognitive way. It's using movement as the vehicle to shape your brain, your nervous system. It's a form of positive neuroplasticity. And I checked with Marlene before telling the story. She was literally one of my first clients when I started this work 4 years ago. She's a walker. If you lived anywhere near her, you would see her out on the walking paths all the time. And she came to me because she had slipped and fallen on the ice, and I think you had cracked a rib as part of that. And so really wanted like to not do that again, right? Who wants to have that kind of outcome over and over. And so we worked together in a class on this dynamic definition of balance, and particularly leaning into the kind of sensing ability that we're going to focus on today so that she could improve her sense of balance. And so we weren't through the series. I think I was doing an 8 week series at that time. And so she gave me a call one day and said, "Hi, Cheryl, I fell again." And I kind of went, "Oh no," like, I have this cringe moment of saying, "You'll be safer." And then I was really worried. She said, "No, no, no, Cheryl, I fell softly." It was a soft go down. She got up, she continued her walk. There was no bad story on the outcome. And so, Marlene, you really helped me sort of, give social proof. I don't know if you want to say anything about your experience. You don't have to, but just to, since you've joined us here today, about what was different for you.
Yeah, the because I'm not really good at I listen to what I'm told to do and I do it, but I don't necessarily get it. But what happened when I fell, it just my arms and everything worked together to make it be softer because I think two things. I knew that I could fall and not get killed, like not break anything. So that was the thing, but we had done enough that I knew I could fall and be okay. And I can't describe it better than that, but that is what happened because poof, my feet went out and I just fell softly. So it was very cool. Yeah.
No, thanks for that. And, you know, this is why this learning from our own movement approach to me makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of really good advice and practices out in the world about like how to get safely to the floor, how to get back up again, especially, if your knees don't work that well, your hips or low back. The thing about falling is like there's no time to make a plan, right? Your reflexes take over and what happens happens. And so, the approach that I do, I've got enough in my personal experience in clients work. We're feeding your reflexes. That's the fastest part, the limbic part of your brain that kicks in and takes over to protect you. So that's the part of the brain we're aiming for with this work, so that you're actually building a better reflex and then hopefully a better outcome from that. So let's get into the movement lesson. Couple things, I'm safety oriented. So I'll guide you through a bunch of movements. We're going to do all of this from sitting, but do movements that feel comfortable for you. I haven't met many of you, so I don't, you may have things going on that I'll ask you to do something and you feel like that's not necessarily great for me. A couple options: helpful to listen for the instructions and then decide how you're going to express the movement. We kind of have I've been to all sorts of fitness classes. People show something and then you just leap into doing it. So, be thoughtful about what you're going to express. And then, especially if you're concerned, we're going to work a lot today with feet and ankles. If this is an area that you think it might hurt, some options that can really work are, move the tiniest amount. Like, so someone across the room couldn't tell that you're moving. The great thing about this work is when we bring our attention and prepare to do a movement for the brain and nervous system, it's as if we've done the movement. So there's no loss if you're not physically moving that part of your body. if you focus and prepare and do the smallest movement, that creates the neurological change. So, and as always, take a rest if you need to. I'll call for some during the time, but take care of yourself. This is a guided experience, but you need to own the kind of experience you're having in your movement. So let's get going. So if I had kind of asked in the email before for everyone to have a firmer chair, like a big, soft recliner, not so helpful. Um, and just to sit on your chair so that your back's a little bit away from the back. Again, if that's comfortable for you, if you need that back support, there's no big loss in that. It just changes a little bit how you're sitting with the chair, and also that your feet are comfortably in contact with the floor. We're going to focus on the ankle as a joint that receives and transmits force from standing and walking. And we're going to lean into this sensing part of the balance system today. So a little less about vision and vestibular. So just in sitting, notice how your ankles feel. Do they feel stiff? Do you feel like you could just move them? Do you notice differences between your right ankle and your left ankle? Take a moment to think about if you had the luxury of sitting right now and having your feet in nice warm wet sand, what kind of impression would you make under your right foot and your left foot? Maybe a little deeper in the heel or around the ball of the foot or the big toe. Would there be weight on the outside edge or the inside edge? Just notice how your feet are. Don't have to change anything. This is part of the process of learning to attend and listen to your body so you can learn from it. And so from here, and again, if your feet are roughly side by side, a comfortable space apart, start to lift your right heel, but do it in a way that, say, imagine there was a piece of paper under your heel and you're lifting your heel just enough that somebody else could slide that paper out. We tend to do movement. We say lift the heel and it pops up 2 inches, right? We're going for the minimal threshold of lift here, such that you can lift a little, lower it, let your leg rest in between each movement. So we're not looking for a rapid fire movement, a thoughtful, mindful lift, and then lower, because I want you to notice a few things. What's happening in your ankle as you lift and as you lower your heel? How does the movement change your right knee? Does it send your knee moving in a direction? What's happening in your right hip joint or even your left hip joint? I'm asking you to unweight a little bit from a foot that's supporting you and sitting that might change something in your hips. Can you notice the degree to when your heel fully returns to the ground and that impression, that contact with the floor? And then let's pause and shift this attention over to your left foot. And so even before you start to lift your left heel, is it easy to recruit this movement of the left side? Is it the same as the right? Is it more difficult? Lifting it just the smallest amount so that little piece of paper can be pulled out, and then lowering, feeling again how this changes the position of your toes, the ball of your foot, how it might change the front of your ankle as you lift and you lower, the direction that your knee might start to go. Do you feel this, moving up into your left hip joint, or maybe it's fainter on this side? Maybe it's clearer, it's more pronounced. Just notice the differences in the movement, even noticing, does your left ankle feel heavier to lift this small amount than the right? And if you're not sure, you can contrast, go back to your right heel and lift a little, and go back to your left. Notice if there's parts of your foot that you're not quite feeling the ground on. And I should mention, I can't see really anyone's feet. This isn't that helpful to do in shoes if you've got them on, if you need them, but it does, wearing shoes all the time kind of shuts off our sensory, the aliveness of our sensory receptors in our feet and ankle. So, and then let's just pause this a little bit, come back to your right foot. So this time you're just going to lift the ball, the forefront of your foot, so your heel stays on the ground. Again, you're lifting it just enough to slide a piece of paper out from underneath. And make sure that when you lower that front of your foot, the ball of your foot, that you actually let those muscles go, that you're not holding attention in, that you're not ready to lift by keeping the top of your foot, the front of your shin muscles tight. So lifting a little, lowering a little. And again, do this at a speed such that you can notice how you lift the ball of your foot, the front of your ankle, that joint closes a little, opens a little as you lower it. Notice how this travels up to your knee. You could always put your hands on the front of your knee or the front of your shin just to get a visceral sense of what's happening. Are you maybe noticing anything happening in your lower right ribs, your right hip? These are small movements, and part of the reason for this kind of small movement and close attention, it's developing a basis to start that flow of sensory information so that you're noticing these small details. Typically in our day-to-day, we don't pay attention to this. And then just alternating a light lift of your right heel and then lowering it, and then a lift of the ball of your right foot. So we're alternating back and forth. Small movements, but enough so you can feel how you're flexing or closing your ankle and then extending your ankle as the heel comes up. All the time sensing how your foot meets the ground, how the ground meets the foot. I talked about this as friendly floor. This sensory process helps you to really know the floor in a more intimate way. And again, noticing what's happening in your knee, through your hip. You might even feel a sense of rolling a little bit over the bottom of your pelvis. If you've seen a pelvis, there's sort of these little pointy sit bone parts. Just this rolling of your foot might shift something in the way you're seating in the chair. Maybe a little something's happening in your right shoulder. One of the ways that we get friendly with the floor is that we start to receive this ground force reaction, the way the earth pushes back on our weight. And sometimes we can feel that all the way up through our shoulders, through our head. It's part of building this dynamic sense of balance. And then let that effort go. Notice if you've been holding your breath to focus. Make sure breathing is highly recommended throughout the whole workshop. 100% people stop breathing, don't finish the workshop. Let's come into our left foot. And again, work on lifting the ball of the left foot, releasing the muscles as you place it down. Noticing how this ankle flexes closed a little as the ball lifts, opens, extends a little as the ball lowers, noticing what's happening on the left side of your body, in your knee, in your hip, small movements in your ribs, a little echo in your left shoulder. And then alternating the movement so that you're lifting your left heel, lowering it, and then lifting the ball of your left foot. And of course, we're in a very small focus way, we're mimicking the motion of walking, right? That we make contact with our heel, we come into the ball of our foot, we lift our heel. But this small little input is helping you gather this sensory information. And then feel free to let that go and just rest a little bit. Part of this method is we do this fine, close attention to ourselves, and then we need a break so that our brain, our nervous system can integrate the inputs so that they become part of you. And I'll just, while we're pausing a bit, the first time the sensory information in my feet and ankles increased, it was during summer, so I tend to go barefoot. I've got old wooden floors, a house in the neighborhood's built in the 50s. And I thought for 3 days I'd stepped on a sticky note because I felt something under my foot and I would look and there'd be nothing. And, at the time I had two cats. I thought, well, maybe, like I looked for explanations for 3 days until I realized I was feeling the grain of the wood through the skin of my feet in a way I'd never felt before. And I didn't know, I didn't feel that until I felt it. Like I didn't know that I was missing anything. I felt a little sheepish that it took 3 days for the pin to drop for me, but it was one of those experiences of like I had acquired or reacquired a sensory capability I just didn't know I didn't have anymore because I wore shoes like we all wear shoes and I walk on flat surfaces like we all. And so it really told me like what awakening this can help. And you bet that makes a difference in you know, some of my stories where the outcome could have been bad. It's really contributed to sensing and stopping falls. So let's come again. If you've moved at all, come back to sit at the edge of your chair. This time we're going to look at lifting the inside of our right foot. So this is the arch. And the movement, I'm going to make a much bigger movement than you likely will, but the idea that the arch lifts and then return. And let's talk about this. We may not have the kind of movement through the ankle capacity for this movement to happen to a great degree or to happen at all. And so we can start with some bigger blocks that you could lift the inside of your ankle, and that sends your knee a ways to the right. So it's working as if your foot and your ankle and your leg are kind of one piece, and you're rolling over the bottom of your leg. And this is really helpful just to get a sense of the movement. But the cool thing about the ankle is that actually it makes this kind of differentiation that we can leave our knee kind of pointed to the ceiling and we can contract the tendons and the muscles on the inside of our leg to lift that arch up. And so again, work with whatever's possible for you in order to do this.
Is it normal to pinch the front of your ankle when you're doing that?
Oh, to pinch the front?
Like it feels really pinched as I'm trying to raise.
Yeah. So I would suggest maybe being a little less ambitious, lifting it again enough that a sheet of paper could come out.
That's all I'm doing.
Oh, okay. Okay. No, fair enough. This is one of these places, if that's really uncomfortable, and this is a great example of I don't have x-rays of everybody's ankle joints. I don't, there could be things going on structurally or otherwise. So make this the smallest lift you can think of, such that someone like 5 feet away wouldn't know
it
You're,
indicates to me that it needs more work.
yeah, well, full disclosure, my right foot, the first time I did this kind of exploration, it did just fine. And my left foot went, "Are you kidding me? Like, I don't do this." And so I've been on a journey and I'm still on it to have that same mobility on the left side because I tend to be very right side oriented. Some people are left side, some people have no difference. But yeah, so explore it in the way that's possible. What I will say is, any attempts help feed sensory information. They don't have to be successful attempts, which is another reason why I like this method. The inputs create the change, not correct performance. This is a learning method, so we need these attempts to learn. So let's pause in that. Now let's try this with the outside edge of the foot. The same situation, you might feel like you want to really move your foot, your ankle, your leg, and your knee in, just so you get a sense of that lift. But eventually we want it to really be contained within the ankle joint. This one's, I find sometimes people find this easier. We tend to have a little more muscular development and activation on the outside of our lower legs compared to the inside. And so just feeling what's possible with this, making sure you continue to breathe. Um, when we hold our breath in the focus of this, we're kind of teaching our bodies to work in a brace position. That's not the reflex we want to build. We want to build a reflex where breathing happens freely. And then let's let this effort go. I'm a terrible overdoer. I'm a poster child for giving myself cramps from these sort of things. So, let the effort go. Do the dose that feels great for a taste. That can be enough. Let's go to our left side, left foot. And again, we're going to lift the inside side of the foot. You can again start with the bigger movement, having your knee go to the side. But eventually we do want to look at this movement of the foot relative to the ankle. As I do this with you off camera, I have a long way to go still on my own journey, and just feeling what is possible for this rolling of your foot such that the inner arch can lift even a little. And then letting that go, pausing, and coming to the outside edge of your left foot so that you're lifting that outer edge that causes your foot to kind of roll through. There's a little more pressure into the ball of your foot, maybe, and to the inside edge of your heel. Feeling this happen through your ankle, feeling it up into your left hip joint or even on your right hip joint. This changes how we're holding our balance, even in sitting, across the kind of surface area of each foot, which is, of course, exactly what we do when we walk and when we're dynamic. And then let go your effort to the extent that's possible. Let go the tension that this might have created for you. If you feel like making like little baby footsteps just to shake out any tension, let that happen. Let's come back and come into your right foot. Let's see now, can we alternate lifting the inside edge, letting it down, lifting the outside edge, letting it down, breathing as you go, noticing how you feel that, through your leg. There's a kind of response in the knee as we lift the bones on each side of the lower leg. There's a response you can feel coming up into your hip joint, our femur, and that little ball that comes into the hip socket. It changes a little bit, the orientation, the contact. We're building through this very small sensory movement experience a sense of continuity through the leg. So the support of the floor, the movement of the foot, and how that ground force travels up through us. And then letting that effort go, trying this on our left side. So lifting the left inner edge, letting that go, lifting the outside edge, and alternating back and forth. Again, at the speed of sensory feeling, so that you can feel what you're doing. And if you find in your attempts that it kind of spirals out of control, I mean, just think about we're in this learning zone, this neuromuscular learning zone, where you're developing this activation possibility, this coordination possibility, just as we did when we started to walk, except we have the luxury of sitting. We're not falling every time we fail to coordinate as a toddler does. They're much closer to the ground. It's an easier outcome for them than it is for us. And then let that effort go. We're going to do just one more variation here. So again, releasing the effort, making sure you're breathing, letting your right heel be the contact point for the ground. And then from here, you're just going to slide your toes a little bit in and a little bit out. So this is kind of a windshield wiper movement of your foot. Go the distance that's comfortable to each side. So if you can go more to the inside but less to the outside, just go the distance that's equal to the right and to the left. As we do this, that might develop. You might develop some range of motion, but that's not really the performance goal at this time. Notice the contact. Notice if you're clenching your toes. Is it possible that your toes get a free ride with this, that you're just sliding your foot one way or the other? Feeling that contact, supporting this little bit of rotation through your ankle, a flicker of it up in your knee and in your hip joint. We're building this kind of sensory motor map of all these ways that your foot, your ankle, your knee, your hip, they work together. And then let that go. Let's come to our left foot. So again, your left heel is the anchor, and you're sliding a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. Again, keeping the range of motion equal on both sides of that sort of straightforward arc. And again, notice, how is this foot compared to the other foot? You know, maybe it's a little less fuzzy about exactly how the left heel sort of plants on the ground. Maybe it's clear. Maybe it's a little harder to recruit this foot to slide to the left compared to the right. Maybe it's the same. The actual what you're noticing matters so much less than noticing it almost in an aesthetic way, like the artistic details of your movement, this kind of novelty, this kind of kind attention. If we do this lesson and the whole time we're like, stupid foot, why you're not working, this does not make a friendly floor relationship. We actually need the kindness and the kind attention to build these kind of positive connections in our system. Again, it relates to building the kind of reflex that we want, that supports that kind of soft landing. If we learn this in the context of self-critique and anger or any other kind of negative emotion, we're building a different reflex. And it sounds a bit woo-woo, but I've pressure tested this well on the Aikido mat at very high speeds, and man, it makes a difference. And so let's leave that exploration here. I'll invite you, and again, your choice, if you want to actually stand. If you're sitting, what might be a nice idea to do is to simulate walking. So you're going to step in place. If you're willing to stand, come into standing, take a moment to pause, to notice how you feel the floor. This most basic sense of, if we use our image of standing in luscious, warm, wet sand, how are your feet making contact with the floor? Does it feel friendly? The floor is hard. Sometimes in this work, there's this feeling of, small tensions. Could depend what shoes you wore today. A million things that could influence a little bit of held tension. Maybe that's a little bit relaxed. Maybe you feel a little bit more contact with the ground. And then you can shift your weight or even walk a little in your space. Just notice if you can bring that experience with you to sense the ground. And there's a external physical aspect of, do my toes fully extend and contact the floor? Am I equal on both sides? But there's also this internal feeling of, like, do I trust my feet to hold me? Do I trust the floor to hold me? That internal, for better word, lack of a better word, niggle that tells me I'm safe, I'm within my comfort zone of balance. And we can come back even to the one leg standing test, which I have to admit, if we've reordered it all, how your foot and your ankle works together, the results could be worse in this moment. We've changed organization, but as you explore standing on one foot or then the other, just to notice that, like, how is your capacity feel at this moment for doing balance? The challenging thing about balance, we literally compose it moment by moment. It isn't I've done this and now my balance is good. It's every input at every moment creates this. So it's a very dynamic process happening through three different channels in your body. And so this was an exploration of improving that sensing part, just primarily with your ankles, a little bit in knees, and a little bit in your hips. And so I do want to take some time. It's a really important part of this process for people to be able to share a bit what their experience is. We have thousands and thousands of sensations a day that we don't pay attention to. And so they're not a learning space. They're just things that our brain, our nervous system, our senses experience. So it's helpful to kind of notice what you experience, bring some attention to it so that that becomes a little bit more part of you. So, happy to hear from folks who'd like to share a little bit of what their experience was. And I'm happy to stay after for questions if you have, but I'd like to kind of just use this space for how was that for you? Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
I feel way more solid on the ground.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm shocked because my ankles don't work worth beans, and so this was surprising.
Cool. Yeah, and I have to say, I never know. I do this process. I think there's a lot of value in it, but I can't know what your experience is going to be, which is why I like to suggest and guide, and then have you, sort of own your own movement exploration experience.
How often should we do ankle exercises? I found it made a difference.
Yeah, I mean, like daily.
Yeah.
um, and you don't need to do, I think we did about, 25, 30, 25 minutes.
Mhm.
I do stuff like this waiting at the grocery store line.
Mhm.
I'm waiting at the red light, and so maybe my right foot's on it, but my left foot is the problem child in my body. So, you know, doing uh doing small lifts one side or to the other. I attended a meeting or a speaker yesterday, so I was, I'm doing my feet. Well, Yeah, I mean, it's the thing about this sensory information flow. Our brains are neuroplastic, and the upside of that is we can change things, and that's really been shown to be true throughout life. It's not just an early, and the issue is if you don't use it, you lose it because we get pruning. Like anything that's not strengthened is deemed not as important and
Yep.
gets cleaned up. So, I turned 58 this year and I'm really feeling the pruning part of that equation landing a little bit different than it did last year.
Yep.
So yeah, I have to say daily, but a minute here, a minute there, like it doesn't have to be huge doses to make an impact. You do need repetition. And so I see a couple things in the comments here. Uh, Okay. Oh, great. That's Sherilyn. So you've sprained your ankle. Oh, just a couple weeks ago. Oh, okay. So, first of all, thanks for going gently. Like, that's something I could have screened for was like acute and recent injuries. Sometimes this process, as gentle as it is not a good idea. But I think a sprain is probably okay. Um, yeah. No, that's great. Again, I think, using that gentle North Star, a little bit of light movement is really important to come back to a good range of motion. But it's definitely in my world below a physiotherapy threshold of movement, just to build that neuromuscular connection again.
Something that I have noticed the last few years is that I don't lift my feet as well as I used to when I'm walking. So sometimes I will scuff a foot and it's kind of like, how'd that happen?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. And I thanks Heather, for your comment. Yeah, like the very much long-term, long ago injuries, I find often really change movement habits and movement capacities. And it's part of, we're brilliant, our brains and bodies, to find compensations and ways to just get there, right? To make it work so I can walk. But they're really, this process really can support people remodeling that a little bit. I mean, not all structural things, but to get to a better functional use is definitely made a difference. Um, yeah. So yeah, thanks. I'll just check. Any other questions or comments about your
I really
experience?
noticed the movements that we were doing in like the front of my shin,
Mhm.
um, more than anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's, the body's a really complex kind of and cool kind of thing. It's great to notice areas that, like, often I find with people I work with, the muscles on the front and their tendons and muscle bodies maybe a little less activated than the calves. We use our calves a lot, and so the very small difference of just that activation can change the relationship between how the front and the back work.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's often about relationships shifting as we bring more of us online with our movement. Um, and so, Linda, let me just respond to that. I want to be respectful of people's time and get everyone out, and then I'm happy to stay on afterwards to answer questions. So this was a taste of a process. I can't say that it absolutely will help you with your balance, but you can see that just even in this short of time, it creates a kind of activation and some possibilities of slightly different ways of moving. More importantly, it's a process that if we follow this over time, sets up a learning cycle so that we actually learn from our own movement. Because my desire is always to have people to learn from themselves, right? I'm a guide in that process rather than an expert telling you how your body is. Um, and it's something that I've believed in enough that, I've kind of invested in that. I will say this is, a promotion to give people a taste. I'm looking to start an 8-week Better Balance class later this year. Hopefully in July. I'm subject to the studio being finished in construction and outfitted and bless the city and their business license process. There's many things that I can't really even influence. So I'll follow up with folks who've registered for this workshop, and more broadly, of course, about when that class will be. But it'll be very similar to this, and always with the option that if standing for long periods of time isn't an option, there'll be seated options always, so that there's a place for people to benefit.
Do you have a class like you were talking about with Marlene uh, for falling? I fell 6 months ago on just a very small incline, but it was gravel, and the way that I fell was not elegant, and it hurt.
Right. It's something that I uh, starting sort of with this Better Balance. If I find people are interested in the falling part of it, I mean, for me, this is fun to learn to practice falling. Happy to do that, especially in the studio environment when I can provide a safer environment
Yes.
to
Yeah,
explore that.
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so thanks so much. I would sort of say I'll send recordings out to everyone who came. So thank you so much for sharing your time with me. Please feel free to share the recording if you like with friends that you think might benefit, or I'm happy to chat with folks if they have questions. Um, yeah, go ahead, Marlene. Yeah.
Carol, I just, for the sake of just sharing what this 4-year little journey has been for us, my mobility is so important to me. I and falling is one of those things, but functional mobility is so important to my quality of life. I am so glad that it's moved along this way because I know I've got more safety in not falling, but the functional stuff, being able to get up and go and turn and do all the stuff I want to do is just so important. And that's the blessing of the classes that we take once a week. It's always working on something that just makes me more able to be in this world and not have to rely on other people to push me around in a wheelchair. I don't want that. Anyhow, so I thank for the many time. I thank you for that because it's been really important to me. Thanks, Cheryl.
So
Yeah.
thanks, Marlene. I promise I didn't pay her money for that promotion, but she's been a delight to co-discover
It has
movement
been
with.
so much fun because everywhere. I mean, I'm 78 and bones are changing and stuff is changing and being able to try and keep up with it so it doesn't take away my ability to be what I want to be has just been it's been a delight. So yeah. Anyhow, there you go.
All right. Well,
Thanks.
thanks
Thanks.
everyone.